Blaze is a sustained tank with a frustratingly strong ability to chase due to making escapes nearly impossible for anyone without mobility abilities. It feels like they successfully designed a Juggernaut and then tacked on a healing capability because that's just what tanks and heroes do. Like, from a really wide lens, he's a ranged tank that can do pretty much everything, but none of his tools are exceptionally strong. He kind of ends up as more of an AoE bruiser than a tank because of his ability to reposition fast and self-sustain when in. His trait is an active ability that grants armor for 4 seconds and deals small AoE damage while active. It's a burst durability ability that helps with the sustain thing I mentioned earlier, at least in combat. Its low duration hurts it a smidge, but it's still a considerable increase to tanking capability, and so long as he actually gets the chance to press the button, he can live through some pretty harsh stuff. New Habits helps him get around in fights, but this guy doesn't have to move so much outside of chasing, so it's not usually better than the other level 1 talents in my opinion, and Meltdown helps with tanking by reducing the damage of anyone hit by Pyromania. Heat Treatment is only good when he can reliably hit more than a couple frontline heroes. His Q is a very long-range skill shot for a tank to have, and does moderate damage to everything in the line. It's alright outside of being a long-range damage ability on an archetype that absolutely does not need it, but it has an interaction with his W that I'll explain in a sec. Suppressive Fire is the only talent for this ability, but it's a good one, since he can pretty reliably be in range to hit, but 20% is not the most game-changing, so he needs to hit targets at long range with both projectiles to make the most of it, which is pretty unreliable. Blaze's W is another ranged ability, but one that functions more in line with what a tank wants to do. It's a long-range AoE vector cast that puts down a slowing area, and it can be ignited if a projectile from Q hits it. It also has a secondary effect of healing Blaze if he's standing in an ignited oil spill. The slow is extremely heavy for how long of a range this ability has, so he can start chases on opponents from a pretty good distance. I don't want to emphasize it too much, but 50% on a range slow is wild, considering that everyone has the same base movement speed in this game. There are quite a few talents for this ability, but the ones I'll note here are Oil Dispersal, which increases the area of spills and has a few other effects, and Nanomachine Coating, which decreases attack speed of anyone on a spill. The latter of these is super good for pretty much any attacks-focused carries because the heavy majority of them don't have a dash or a blink to immediately get out of it. His E is not a ranged ability, but it is still strange for a Juggernaut to have. It's a long-range dash that stops on the first hero hit and stuns everything in a small AoE for a short duration if it does hit. You might note that I have said long range for every ability in this character's kit so far, and that's not very in line with the identity of tanks, and especially of the Juggernaut subclass. This ability in particular is a bit whack for engaging, because it also puts him exactly where he wants to be while doing his primary job at the same time. Fuel Leak is a good talent for getting spills down everywhere in a fight, but you lose out on one of the other two extremely strong talents at the same level. Thermal Protection, though, is helpful for his desire to take skill shots, but the armor doesn't stack with Pyromania, so it's just fine for burst tanking. The first ult is Bunker Drop, which, if you'd believe it, drops a bunker on Blaze. Allies can enter it when it's down and can shoot a single projectile flame stream while inside. It's not an immediate drop, but all units inside are put into stasis, so anyone can dodge homing abilities, damage over time, or basic attacks by entering it. It's pretty alright for avoiding damage and prolonging the lives of teammates if they are willing to click on it. It has a hidden use of contesting narrow hallways and especially mercenary camps due to its fairly large size, but merc camps can't be captured from anyone being inside, it just keeps anyone out due to collision. The Storm talent lets units inside cast Oil Spill from inside the bunker, and increases the armor of units exiting the bunker. The other ult is Combustion, which is a channeled ability that slows Blaze while building up damage over time in a heavy slow in a large AoE around him. The duration of both based on how long he channels, which are applied when the ability ends. While it is a long channel time for an ability, it makes him a priority for crowd control while he is channeling, so it's kinda good for a tank to have a way to force priority of disables. Otherwise, it's another tool to keep targets from getting away due to it being a potentially long duration slow. The Storm talent for this removes Blaze's self-slow and instead slows anyone in the AoE while channeling, which means that he can slow multiple enemies in a large AoE by 60% for potentially 7.5 seconds. He has a lot of noteworthy talents, partially because he has a fairly viable basic attack build, which is especially good for clearing mercs and minions. But to go in order, the 3 stim pack talents all have good use cases. Adrenaline for basic attacks, Neural for team fighting, and Endurance for everything else. They're all good for doing what he needs, the choice between them is usually just based on the composition of the team he's on. Along the lines of the basic attack build, Incinerator Gauntlets increases his damage against non-heroics by a whopping 40%, which adds up pretty quick if he hits the whole minion wave at the same time. Juggernaut Plating is a special ability that helps a ton against heavy magic damage carries by working as a magic damage burst tank ability that he can use before or after Pyromania for a lot of relative durability. Burn Notice is even more chasing power if he can get some basic attacks on a retreating target, though it's not as strong as an oil spill, so more situational. In conclusion, Blaze is almost an all-rounder type that has particularly strong chases and movement speed manipulation, and tons of talents that allows him to oppress the enemy carries to a pretty crazy degree, all while being difficult to kill due to on-demand high armor and moderate healing. Maybe not the best tank in the game, but choosing him as a blind pick will rarely come back to bite him in-game.